All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going deep into Sun Tzu's Art of War to unpack the absolutely staggering cost of conflict. But this isn't just an ancient history lesson. We're going to see how a tragic event in our own time brought this timeless wisdom into painful, sharp focus.
So Sun Tzu hits us with this line right away, 1,000 pieces of gold. I mean, that sounds like a ton of money, right? But what does it really mean? You've got to understand, he wasn't just talking about cash. He was talking about the total, all-consuming cost of putting a massive army into the field. So let's break that down.
So, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around this? Well, to really get it, Sun Tzu breaks down the cost of war into three absolutely critical pillars. And trust me, it's a calculation that goes way, way beyond just paying the soldiers. So here they are: manpower, material, and the financial resources to pay for the whole shebang. Sun Tzu kicks things off with manpower, and for good reason. Because the real human cost, it's not just the soldiers on the front line. No, the actual number is much, much bigger. Think about it like this. For every one of those 100,000 armored soldiers, Sun Tzu is telling us you need at least one other person just to handle logistics. You know, getting them food, water, and supplies. And this isn't some dusty old idea. Look at the Huaihai campaign in China. It reportedly took millions of civilians to support an army of 600,000. That is an absolutely staggering ratio of support to combat. Next up, material resources. Now, this is where it gets really cool. Sun Tzu talks about a force with 1,000 light chariots and 1,000 heavy ones. What's so incredible is how these ancient concepts map directly onto modern warfare. The light chariots, they were built for speed, surprise attacks, basically today's light tanks. And the heavy chariots? Armored behemoths for frontal assault. They were the ancient world's main battle tank. And just look at this. It really drives home the sheer scale of that operation. Can you even imagine the challenge? You have to move enough food and supplies over huge distances to keep a moving city of 200,000 people fed and ready to fight. The logistics alone are just breathtaking. Okay, so finally, we hit that financial pillar, the 1,000 pieces of gold per day. Sun Tzu is quick to point out it's not just about payroll and food. You've got diplomatic expenses, the constant need for materials like glue and lacquer to keep weapons working, and of course, the endless costs of fixing up chariots and armor. Now, this is super important to get. 1,000 pieces of gold wasn't a literal price tag. Scholars cited in the source explain it was a phrase used for a value so immense it was almost hard to calculate, maybe something like 375 kilograms of copper. Back in the spring and autumn period, that kind of expense would practically empty out a state's entire treasury every single day. And this quote from another ancient text, the Guanzi, just says it all. War is a giant, resource-burning machine. But see, this isn't just a warning about overspending. It's about the catastrophic cost of being unprepared. So you might be asking, does this ancient math, this incredible burden, still apply today? Oh, you bet it does, and tragically so. Now we have to shift gears to a really painful moment in modern history. In 1999, the U.S. bombing of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade sent shockwaves around the world. The official U.S. line was that it was a tragic mistake. The source material we're looking at today, however, frames this event as not just a political tragedy, but a military one that was rooted in a massive technological gap. At that time, what the source calls a generational gap existed between the two militaries. Basically, the U.S. had evolved into what's called an informationized force, meaning it was capable of launching incredibly precise strikes from unbelievable distances. And this chart right here, it shows just how stark that difference really was. On one hand, you have the U.S. with a stealth bomber that could hit a specific window from hundreds of kilometers away. On the other hand, China's military, which at the time was focused on economic development, was still largely mechanized, using conventional artillery with a range of just dozens of kilometers. It's not a gap, it's a chasm. This source uses this incredibly powerful Chinese folk analogy to describe the situation. It was like a beggar trying to compare treasures with the Dragon King. The implication is that the technological disparity was just impossibly vast. For the authors of the source material, this whole tragic event became what they call a lesson paid for in blood. It hammered home a timeless military truth. You simply cannot afford to neglect preparedness. Why? Because the cost of being unprepared is always, always far greater than the cost of being ready. And this is where it all ties back together, bringing us full circle. The source draws a direct line from Sun Tzu's warning 2,500 years ago to this modern tragedy. That 1,000 pieces of gold he talked about, it's not just the price you pay when a war breaks out. It's the constant, sustained investment in technology, in training, and in material that forms the absolute bedrock of a nation's security.
Which leaves us with one final, really provocative question to chew on. Is that immense daily cost that Sun Tzu described truly the price of waging war? Or is it the necessary, ongoing investment required to deter conflict and secure peace in the first place? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.